Hi, I'm Scott Dennison, and I'm an attorney here to talk to you about foreclosure and what to do if it's imminent, regardless of what stage you are in the process. Hopefully this information will help you, and if nothing else, hopefully it'll prompt you to get help from somebody who knows what they're talking about and who has experience in helping people go from, being overwhelmed by being in what they see is a very negative situation to having a plan to pivot out of the situation and start fresh. So I want to just start with an overview of the process of foreclosure in Florida. And if you are already familiar with this, then just skip ahead. But you may want to share this with somebody you know, a friend or family member who is not familiar with the process. So in Florida, when you take a mortgage, it serves as a lien against the property. And what does this mean? It means that you maintain ownership of the property and the bank merely owns a lien. They hold a lien. And under the laws in the state of Florida, for the lender to exercise its rights under default on the mortgage instruments, they need to go into court. They need to convince the court that they're entitled to foreclose. That's a judicial process that you have the right to object to and file defenses in opposition to. And once they have proven that they have the right to foreclose, then the court will enter a judgment ordering a sale of the property by the clerk of court. This process, if executed perfectly, can happen in as little as 90 days. For practical purposes, that's sometimes difficult for the lender's attorneys to achieve. If somebody like me gets involved in the case, they have a lot more obstacles between them and the finish line in obtaining a judgment. And why is that important to you if you are facing a foreclosure action? For example, if you've received a summons in the state of Florida, well, I should say a summons for your foreclosure against your property in the state of Florida. You may be anywhere in the world. You could be in Germany or Switzerland or Puerto Rico, or anywhere for that matter. And I've represented clients all over the world related to foreclosures against Florida property. But anyway, I digress. So let me get back to what I was saying. If you receive a summons, you generally have 20 days to file a written response. I can't emphasize to you how important an initial response is, because under the rules of civil procedure, you can waive defenses that are what we call pre-answer defenses, jurisdictional defenses, defenses to service of process, etc. And you don't want to waive defenses in a foreclosure case. Every month this case is pending, you are still able to utilize your property, you're still able to live there, you're still able to rent the property out, whatever the case may be. So you don't want to give up these rights voluntarily. So at a minimum, you need to make sure that you comply and get a response in within 20 days so that you're not subject to what is called a clerk's default. Now, in civil litigation, a default is like a forfeit in Little League sports. Remember that time you got snowed out, you couldn't show up to your ball game, or you got rained out, or you got hurricaned out, or whatever the case may be, wherever you grew up, and you couldn't show up, so the other team got the win on their side. That's basically what a forfeit is. And in civil litigation, basically a default is like that. It says that you cannot raise defenses to the case, and the plaintiff, is able to move forward based on their allegations being deemed more or less. So that's the initial response, and that, as an attorney, sets the tone for the entire litigation. Generally, I like to analyze the pleadings and your situation before filing an initial response, so I know sometimes it might be another pre-answer motion. Sometimes I may want to file an answer, affirmative defenses, along with a motion, or sometimes there's no motion appropriate. So this is the type of analysis that goes into analyzing the complaint before a response is filed. Then we go through the discovery process. We deal with any dispositive motions, take any depositions if any are needed, and then we set up the case to go to a bench trial. Why a bench trial and not a jury? In your mortgage documents, you've waived the right to a jury trial. These cases are tried by a judge, not a jury of your peers. But the one thing that I want to remind you of is that foreclosure usually doesn't exist in its own universe. Usually it accompanies other issues with debt, credit card delinquencies, vehicle delinquencies, and oftentimes people need to consult regarding a bankruptcy filing. And if that is the case, I don't want you to look at just the foreclosure, although that might be the elephant in the room because your family still needs a place to live. But if you are dealing with other debt issues, and this is something that is very important to me to know at the outset, then you want to let your attorney know, because depending on your circumstances, the timing of the bankruptcy filing could be significant depending on the situation with your vehicle. For example, a lot of people bought COVID vehicles, and these vehicles are now extremely underwater because the used auto market has declined so much. Did you know that you can cram down what you owe on these vehicles to their market value in certain bankruptcy cases? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you didn't know that you can get a 722 redemption loan in certain bankruptcy cases and buy your car for its current value out of the bankruptcy and keep it. There are a lot of tools available, and you want to get with somebody who knows what tools are available so that they can counsel you on making the best out of a bad situation. Nobody is going to tell you that being in a bankruptcy or a foreclosure is a great situation, but why not take advantage of where you are and do what you can to make lemonade out of lemons? You know, you are in a situation where if you can find a way to learn about the situation that you're in and the consequences of certain actions, you can really pivot out of this and be way better off. For example, a lot of people don't realize that soon after a bankruptcy filing, you will start getting ads for credit cards right away. Why? Because if your debt's discharged, what risk do you have? Especially if you still have a solid income. All that debt's gone, so your ratios on your credit report are completely different now. So you'll start getting those solicitations right away. And if you want to discuss these things with me, I'm happy to discuss them with you. But getting back to the foreclosure process and what you can expect, and I want to walk you through. They're going to move for final judgment and set a sale date. Things that can interrupt this, for example, is if you apply for a loan modification or any other type of workout that your loan servicer might be offering, you can potentially get them to put off certain processes in order to pursue these types of alternative outcomes. And so if that's something that you're pursuing, you can anticipate that it might have an impact. It might not have an impact. And so one of the things that I found in my practice over the years, and that began back during, I began in 2009, so that was coming out of the '08 global financial crisis, where the foreclosures really started to pile up, because I got my law degree in 2008 and shortly after that was sworn in, and the first types of cases that I took on were mortgage foreclosure cases. The first motion I ever argued in court was a motion to dismiss a mortgage foreclosure complaint, and I won that motion. And so that started my experience, which led all the way up to obtaining appellate opinion on an evidentiary issue in a foreclosure case. So, I've been dealing with these issues and helping people resolve these foreclosure problems for a long time. And what I can share with you on a personal level is that it's stressful. I'm an empathetic person, and every time I take on one of these cases, it implicates somebody's household. So the kids being able to stay in the same school, or the people being able to continue living in their family home, or potentially saving the land that has been in the family for generations from bank foreclosure. And all of these things I kind of put on my shoulders. It's kind of hard for me not to. And I've seen people go from being multimillionaires down to their last property and trying to figure out how to save it so they have a place to live in their retirement. I've seen people who didn't have much at all. They had a single wide trailer that they financed, that they attached to land that had been in the family for 3 generations, and they were at risk of losing that land and their mobile home and everything in between. I've helped people with commercial foreclosures, and you name it, everything in between. So being a litigator, I can talk about a lot of the technicals of litigation, but really what I do is I provide peace, because you're, like everybody else, shocked and embarrassed that you're in this situation. You may not be familiar with what the possible outcomes are. You may not know who to talk to because of fear of judgment or people's opinion of you, and trust me, everybody knows somebody that's been in this situation. Nobody plans to be there, and nobody takes pride in being there. But one of the things that you can do by watching this video is you can help educate people that you know so that they can make better decisions. Well, so you can make better decisions, of course, but so that you can guide people that you know that may have similar issues and say, hey, I'm going through something similar, and this information I found very useful to help guide me through it. The worst thing that you can do, I think, is rob Peter to pay Paul. And it's hard to know when you have to go all in and understand that you're in a situation that you're not going to recover from. And, it's one of those things that oftentimes people wait too long. I've seen people cash out retirement accounts. I've seen people sell homestead property for some reason. that had equity to pay on a rental property mortgages off. I've seen a lot of decisions that, I question with my background, but some people don't know that their Florida homestead is not just about a tax savings, it's protected the equity in that homestead from creditors. So if you're going to circle the wagons, you circle the wagons around the Florida homestead. Other things people don't know is that certain retirement accounts in bankruptcy are protected. They're exempt from creditors in a bankruptcy case. Why is this? Well, the government wants to get paid. So if you have money in a retirement account, they're going to assume that you're going to live off of that money before they have to support you. And so it seems obvious that if you have money in a retirement account, 401k, that might be something the government wants you to hang on to rather than give to one of your lenders in a bankruptcy case. And so learning about these bankruptcy rules and what is exempt and what is not exempt, which varies by state, so bear that in mind. I'm a Florida attorney and a Colorado attorney right now, maybe adding new states, but for now I can tell you that the homestead protection in Florida is one of the most powerful in the country. Colorado, not so much. It seems like the bankers brought all their statutes from the east to Colorado when the state was founded and got all their laws passed before anybody else could. But the Florida protections for homeowners, for the Florida homestead, are very powerful. So take advantage of that. Learn all you can. If you think that a foreclosure is coming, seek out the counsel of people who understand what the process is and what you're going to be going through. And mainly, get some help from someone who can think with a clear head, who can be objective, and who's not going to be judgmental. For example, I've counseled countless individuals, and I would say it numbers over 1,000 now, between folks that I've spoken with and counseled and folks that have retained me for representing them. And I can tell you, everybody approaches it differently, but it's not a proud moment for anybody to be involved in a lawsuit, let alone a foreclosure case where somebody's trying to sell your home to pay money that you can't pay back. And there's a lot of reasons why you can't pay it back, and I'm going to guess that you weren't responsible for the manipulation of the markets and the bubble that real estate went into, and that those things were completely out of your hand. I'm going to assume that you were working hard and trying to achieve the American dream, like all of us are, just grinding and trying to take care of our families the best we can. But having said that, now that you're in the situation, it's one of those things. Don't hate the player, hate the game. And when you're in the game, you want to make sure that you have a great team. You want to make sure you understand the rules, and you want to make sure that you are able to play the game as effectively as possible. And so with this video, it's really designed to introduce you to the idea that if things don't go according to plan A and you're not able to continue making your mortgage payments, then, there are options for you. But I want to back up now, and I want to talk about what priorities are if you do get into financial trouble, because there's a pattern that I see over and over, and that is people continue to pay high interest credit cards because they've gotten used to floating their monthly expenses on the credit cards. Maybe they get points and they get a flight every now and then with the points or something like that, and they float expenses and they pay a portion or all of it off every month. If you do get into trouble, a rule of thumb is let the unsecured expenses fall by the wayside first. And the reason for that is the things that are securing debts are like your car and your home, and those things are usually responsible for other people getting transportation to and from work or school, or other people having a place to live and a roof over their head. So you want to look at the things that are not vital to your survival month to month. Cut those back first. So Discover, Amex, Visa, MasterCard. I hate to say it, but typically people decide to let those go first. Once they go delinquent, they can sue you, so bear that in mind, and you may want to talk to someone about what that looks like if they do. They may write it off. They may look at your credit report and see that you're having a difficult time, and they may just let it go. And if they do, then you may want to be aware of what the limitations periods are, how long they can collect that debt, and things like that. You may have other issues. You may have a second mortgage or a HELOC on your home. You may have tax liens on your home. You may have judgments for medical debt or other expenses that are weighing you down. And so this is why it helps to take a holistic approach, not just talk about the foreclosure case, but bear in mind the last time around when there was kind of a rush into foreclosure defense, there were a lot of attorneys that were providing foreclosure defense services, but really we're not interested in taking a look at that holistic approach for you. I decided to go a different direction because I found that oftentimes, majority of my clients at least, their situations were more complex than just one foreclosure case. I mean, I represented people in multiple foreclosure cases, sometimes on the same property. You could have a homeowners association foreclosing, a second mortgage foreclosing, and a first mortgage foreclosing, believe it or not, all at the same time. Is it common? I wouldn't say it's common, but has it happened? Yes. And how to navigate all through all of that, and come up with a plan so that you aren't stressed and that you can sleep at night, so that you can get through this process. I think all of that is very important for your peace of mind and for knowing the pathway forward to get through this and come out of the other side. One of the things that I will mention to you is that when I look at your case, I'm looking not only for how I can defend you, but if I have any issues that I think may go up on appeal, you can look at my website, and I have linked a few oral arguments that I made years ago on foreclosure cases where we argued issues that went up on appeal. It's uncommon, and I say that because most of these cases resolve either by people getting a loan modification, and after a certain amount of time passes, people become reemployed, they're able to get some money coming in, and the banks will often rewrite the loan, for lack of a better expression, and allow you to start making payments again. And sometimes those payments are at a reduced interest rate, and sometimes those payments are at a longer term. But ultimately, it's, if the bank does that, the idea is that they can turn a non-performing loan, back into a good loan and get you out of the foreclosure. And once you start making those payments, they will dismiss the lawsuit. Sometimes people resolve their cases with a short sale. And basically what that is when the market's falling, like right now, the prices are falling around the state of Florida for sure. If people cannot sell their home and earn enough revenue from the sale to pay off the mortgage liens, sometimes the lenders will agree to the sale. You need to be wary of the language in the agreement. If the lenders don't expressly waive the right to pursue you for a deficiency judgment, a short sale may not make sense because you're providing them with all the evidence they need of the value of the home, and they can go into court and ask for a deficiency judgment against you for that amount. And all that means is that if you got a loan for $500,000 and your property sells for $400,000, that you're still going to have the privilege of paying back $100,000 to your bank, even though you don't have the privilege of using the property anymore. So that's usually the elephant in the room that people want to try to avoid having that happen, because who wants to do that? You want to get this boat anchor off your neck and start over, get a new place to live and reset. You don't want to have to be servicing $100,000 in debt. And oftentimes it's just not practical to do that anyway, because if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're not a trust fund child and that you have real reasons why you're concerned about defending a foreclosure case, mainly that you can't cut them a check and pay off the balance. So another option is a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and that is that you need to make sure that as part of that deal that you have ensured that it's in full satisfaction of the amount owed. You're providing voluntarily deed to the property to the loan servicer. In exchange, they're agreeing not to continue the foreclosure litigation and not to pursue you for any deficiency balance. If you don't get that agreement, I'm not sure why you would benefit from a deed in lieu of foreclosure, but hey, there may be a set of circumstances I don't know about, but handing over a property to somebody without getting something in return seems like a bad idea. Having said that, I'll caution you about scams, because oftentimes people will come out of the woodwork, offer to help you get out of foreclosure, and they will suggest that by transferring the property to them, that they'll come in and defend the lawsuit on your behalf. And that's a joke, because nobody's going to defend the lawsuit on your behalf except an attorney that you retain. If somebody takes deed to the property because, for example, they want to live in the property, or they want to try to skim equity off the property, or they want to do something, they're really not helping you out. So if you want to talk about that in more detail, let me know, and I'd be happy to discuss that over a beer, because I've seen this too many times and seen people lose their homes that were paid off with nonsense like this. There was one situation with an association foreclosure that I just never understood. But if you find yourself in a situation and you're just not sure what the angle is for the person who solicited you, then reach out to someone who can be trusted, and hopefully that means it's a lawyer, and get some better advice, because there are people that will pray after you, pray with the EY when you're going through hard times, because they know that you want a solution, a cure for the problem. And it's not always easy to find that cure. So we've talked about those resolutions. I haven't really gotten into how bankruptcy can impact on your case. And let me touch on that just briefly. If you're filing a Chapter 7 case, you can discharge all of your unsecured debts, which frees up more income to pay your mortgage, which may make it easier to obtain a loan modification. You also may be able to use the bankruptcy code to cram down certain loans in a Chapter 13 filing, potentially strip liens if the property is upside down and you end up with an equity line or second mortgage that's completely unsecured. There's a lot of tools available to you that you're not going to find in the online forums necessarily online, and you'd really benefit from talking to a foreclosure defense attorney who actually cares, not one who sees this as a very lucrative business opportunity, because it's really not. A lot of cases over the years, they're kind of the exception to the rule, and they can obviously, with some economies of scale, service a lot of clients, and obviously that's something I do. I use the tools of technology that are available to us to try to maximize my efficiency and to help all my clients with the least amount of overhead, I guess, heavy lifting as possible. So obviously we want to make a living and help people at the same time. I mean, it kind of goes without saying. But the reason that I practice other areas and not just foreclosure defense is because those other areas, generally can provide more revenue for an attorney and lower stress and lower overhead, frankly. But this is something that I'm good at. This is something that I've developed some skill at over the years, and I'm happy to once again be providing this service to clients after stepping away from actively practicing in this area for a few years and focusing on other areas of civil litigation. I've now opened Pivot Point Legal to kind of get back in that game, which is probably a bad term to use because nobody really sees that as a game, right? But as lawyers, this is our ball field. I mean, this is what we do for a living, so in large part it is a game. So anyway, hopefully this overview has been helpful for you to get an introduction to, as a foreclosure defense lawyer, what I do to help people out. And if you'd like to get into learning what can be done in your specific situation, go ahead and take the next step and contact a qualified lawyer to talk about your specifics and put together a plan, because it's better to get a plan in place sooner rather than later and be up against something at the last minute and risk facing a default and potentially losing your home. So I would get after it right away and get that peace of mind that comes with hashing out a plan and, being on top of things. So if you're one of those people that's been sticking your head in the sand, and I don't say that in a derogatory manner, but some people just get overwhelmed and they can't handle it, and I get it. But if that's you, now you have the tools to become educated. I'm going to continue writing articles about this subject, putting out videos about this subject, and talking to you here on this channel about issues that come up as this next wave of foreclosures hits Florida. We're just kind of starting to see, coming off the top of this big bubble, we're just starting to see the foreclosure filings increase. And, if that involves you being served with a foreclosure, rest assured that you don't have to go it alone, that there are a lot of lawyers in Florida who can help you address these problems, and after you get through this season. So thanks for being here. I appreciate your attention, and you can subscribe and share this with your friends, and hang out here for more content, and hopefully there'll be some useful information here that you can use for practical purposes. But if you get anything from this video, I guess what I want to tell you is that the information has never been more available to you in the history of the world. You can look on Google, you can ask what your favorite AI to explain to you the foreclosure process in your state, and you're going to get a pretty thorough answer. And what you're not going to get is an AI that's experienced taking these cases through to bench trials and winning, experienced taking these cases up on appeal, experience obtaining loan modifications for people. I've actually had clients who I've obtained up to 3 loan modifications for, And the one case, the party was not able to accept the first two because she wasn't employed again and was still trying to find a job. So these are the kinds of variables that AI just cannot provide assistance with. It's not an issue of the information not being out there for you. It's just, most people don't even know what questions to ask about these topics because they just haven't spent 15 years dealing with this kind of stuff. And so I encourage you to learn a lot, write down your questions, and then when you do decide it's time to get some help and not go through this on your own, ask those questions, get them answered, and come up with a plan that makes sense for you. But don't go it alone. So many people are going to look at videos like this and they're going to just say, oh, I got this. And let me tell you, it's never cost effective. The amount that you would pay for somebody to defend your case is minimal compared to the risk that you're facing of going it alone. I can give you examples till the cows come home, of people who retained my services and immediately within the first month saw tremendous bottom line impact, especially when it comes to enforcing certain parts of commercial mortgages. This is an area where if you have a commercial property and you don't obtain somebody to help you with it, I don't know what you're doing, because that is something where you stand to lose right out of the gate due to the terms in these contracts. You stand to lose on your guarantees. And of all mortgage foreclosures, those are usually the ones that are higher stakes. You're talking 5-6 figure monthly mortgage payments on some of these properties, and that's substantial. And so if you're in that situation and you haven't faced it before, all I can say is that you need to, listen to what Mama said. She said, to save for a rainy day. And if you're in that situation, brother, it's raining. And so keep that in mind as you're deciding what to do. Appreciate you being here and being part of the community. And if there's anything I can do, let me know. If you have any topics you'd like me to discuss on videos like this, let me know. And we'll see you on the next one.